Today I'm here with Daniela Ruah, a multilingual American-Portuguese actress best known for playing NCIS Special Agent Kenzie Blight in the CBS procedural series NCIS Los Angeles. She landed her first acting role at the age of 16 and graduated from BA in Performing Arts in Metropolitan University with first-class honors. In 2007, Daniela studied at Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute in New York. How are you doing today,
I
Daniela?
am so good. Thank you for asking.
Can you share with us a little bit about your story? How did you become an actress?
So I was a very rambunctious, very energetic kid. And I think early on, both my parents identified a certain artistic inclination in me. So they fed that by, allowing me to go to dance classes and acting classes and all this stuff. And I was actually born in the US. So, I had a couple of lessons when I was a kid here in America. But then when I went to Portugal as a 5-year-old, they put me back in a dance school. And I think I had so much energy, I was politely invited to leave. And the teacher, who is still someone I adore nowadays, she recommended rhythmic gymnastics, which I did for 4 years and competed nationally and all that stuff. And then I think once I had matured enough to control my energy, I went back to dance classes and theater classes. And it was always a passion of mine. But I don't think that I knew at that point that I would make a profession out of any of it. I actually thought I would probably be a dancer first. And then there came a point in my life where I had to choose between dancing and acting because I wasn't interested in musical theater that kind of combined both. And I just figured at some point my body is going to tell me when I'm done with dance, and I don't want anything to tell me when I'm done. And so I chose acting because I can literally work until the day I die. So I started working at 16, saw an audition on television in Portugal for a soap opera. They were looking for a lead character. So I told my mom, I'm going to go over there after school. I'm going to catch the train, go to the audition. And that's what I did. And then got the call back and went back a couple times and ended up getting the lead character's best friend. But at that point, I guess I did a good enough job where I got invited to do another soap opera after that. And, networking, which you guys talk about on the show so much, started for me. I was getting along with people and it just kind of snowballed from there. And then it became a real option to follow through as a career. And both my parents were supportive enough that they were like, you should go to college for this. This is what you love. And I said, yes, it is. This is what I love. My dad and I flew from Portugal to London to look at different colleges and sort of visit different campuses and see what resonated with me. And London Metropolitan University was the one that stuck. Originally, I wanted to go straight to New York, but my mother begged me as an only child. She begged me to stay a little closer to home. And London is only a 2-hour flight versus a 5-hour flight to New York. So that was how it all started.
That was a really cool story, especially like the journey of following your passion and then even taking it a step further. Charlie can even come on. This is kind of like me being dad, because you're in a career that's extremely tough to break into. There's so many people, especially just recently spending time in LA, everywhere that's trying to break into the industry. What was that? Was there like a moment where you kind of had that breakthrough point that really kicked things off? And I don't know, what was that like for you? Or is it just a series of small steps up?
Honestly, I think it was more of a series of small steps. Had I not started professionally at the age of 16 and started to learn the etiquette of being on set and of being on time and of always knowing your lines, which I cannot speak for myself at that time. I think I was actually pretty bad with my lines back then. My excuse now would be I was in school at the same time and they would pick me up at school at 3:30 in the afternoon. I would do homework and whatever gaps I had. And we'd sometimes shoot until 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning for me to then go home, shower, and then go to school the next day at 8:30 because our sort of labor laws are a little bit different if your parents allow you. And I was 16, so I wasn't super, super young, but I was still considered a minor. But it was do your homework whenever you can. You don't have a tutor on set or anything like that. I'm not sure how it is now, but back then it was sort of a little bit of a free for all. So I think everything started for me at the age of 16, but then it was very incremental as of that point. There was no sort of aha moment and, oh my gosh, I finally broke through. It was soap operas in Portugal, which at the time felt like a huge deal. And it was because soap operas in Portugal are the best job you can get as an actor. Theater is more creative, but you probably don't get paid as much. And then our cinema industry in Portugal is so tiny that it's very difficult to make movies because that part of the industry tends to stick to the people they already know. And again, everything has changed since that time. I mean, we're talking 2000, that was 21 years ago. a lot of stuff has evolved at this point in a very positive way. But I think that starting that young taught me to have incredible discipline. I would have to go to school from 8:30 to 3:30, and then I'd get picked up at school and go straight to work. And if we had to shoot until 2:30 in the morning, that's what would happen. And then they'd drive me home and I'd go to school at 8:30 the next day. So you might think, what the heck were your parents thinking? But there was a very serious conversation that happened between myself and them, or them and me rather, at that time, where they said, this is going to be tough. This is going to be a commitment. Is this really what you want to do? Because if it is, we'll support you, but you've got to stick to your responsibilities. And I promised them that I would. And I think, everything is kind of a trial period with your kid, right? No parent really knows what they're doing 100%. We make mistakes or we have successes, but my parents allowed me to take that risk and were supportive about it, which I think is what allowed me to get to where I am. And it worked out. And then in the meantime, I applied to go to college, and I said, I'm not going to work during college because I know how hard that was, being in school and working at the same time. So I did my BA in college without working, went back to Portugal, worked a few more years, got my first hosting gig. And I was also very humble about how I procured work. Just because I'd been a lead character on a show before didn't mean that I was too big to take other types of jobs. And so as soon as I got to Portugal, I walked into a bar and I said, can I get a job? And I got a job working behind a bar because I just didn't know when the next acting gig would come along. And luckily it was shortly after that. I got a hosting gig and some more acting work. But it came to a point where I was like, you know what? This is getting very comfortable. This is successful here in Portugal, but there's a part of me that needs more. And so I told my parents that I would be applying to the Lee Strasberg School in New York, and it was time to make the shift to the United States. They had both studied and lived in the United States, which is why I was born here. So they understood that fire in the belly.
This is great. I think getting the early start, building your discipline early, being humble, these are things you built in from the beginning that allowed you to keep a good pace as you progressed.
Yeah. And then when you also encounter, anybody who enters this industry knows that there are so many moments that are considered failures, or a door closing in your face, or you hear a bunch of no's before you hear that first yes. And that happened to me, and it still happens to me. In my mind, I have this whole resume I've built up until my early 20s, and I come to the US and I have God knows how many meetings with managers and agents that they didn't see anything in me. And that's okay. You know what I mean? You either relate to someone or you don't, until the moment I did relate to someone and they related to me. And I've been with that same agent for almost going 15 years now, because it's been a successful relationship. So I studied at the Lee Strasberg School, which, by the way, since I already had a degree in performing arts, it was more of an excuse to keep me busy and network, more so than, of course, learning new skills is always good. But it was essentially because I didn't know how to get a job here. I didn't know how to contact agents. I didn't know if that it was even an appropriate thing to do. Do you do workshops? I was sort of buying time to learn the ways of America, because they're different from London and they're different from Portugal. So yeah.
That's an awesome story. I'll leave it to you, Shyla. Like I said, I just asked questions out of curiosity, and that you see how it led to so many more details in that story. And then that's got the fun part, because I got the real meat of oh my God, Danielle works so hard, and really that's where it gets interesting.
Well, no, it's interesting. I think when you have anybody who's working in the public eye, we generally get to see the fruits of their labor. It's very rare to actually get to see the labor itself. Many times, if I have a younger person who's like, oh, I really want to be an actor or an actress, or I really want to do this in my life, how did you do it? I would say, I can tell you, but your journey is never going to be the same as mine. And no one else will have the same journey as you, because it's just something you're going to have to build and figure out. Whether you can ask me oh, out of these 3 acting schools, which one do you like the best? I can discuss that with you. But you've got to find those schools first. It's not my job to find schools for you. It's your job to put that kind of work in. And then, of course, everybody needs advice along the way. But yeah, I always support the people that present me with a lot of research done first. And then I'm more than happy to help and spend time with them. But if it's just sort of how do I do it? If you can't even get started, I can't help you, because I already know that your spirit isn't in the right place to go through this. You won't survive the no's and the doors in your face if you don't have the fire to get it started. The inertia needs to come from you, not me.
No easy buttons.
What are your top 3 principles to success?
Top 3 principles to success. It's hard to pinpoint just 3, because obviously I think each one of those 3 things are always going to spider web into a bunch of other things. I don't even know if there's a specific order to this. I think self-awareness is a big one. When we have a fake notion of ourselves, when we think we're more or less than we actually are, we probably won't be making ideal decisions in terms of the path that we go down. So it's really important to acknowledge what you're good at, be okay talking about it, acknowledge what needs work. And that could mean a certain skill set, or that could mean interacting with other people. It's pretty broad. That's why I say like it can spider web into other things. But you had someone else you interviewed on the show, a Harvard professor, and she mentioned the word brag. She said, brag, fail, pivot. And that really resonated with me. You know, I always thought like brag, oh my gosh, no, that's so unhumble. However, the way she explained it was you can't just sit down and expect people to notice your work. It's okay to talk about it. That actually, I learned that from your podcast. And so, yeah, self-awareness. And it's okay within that self-awareness to talk about the positive things that you're capable of or that you've already done, because that just shows what the base is that people can then build upon with you. And then I don't really like the word fail, because it just sounds so negative, but failing forward is, okay, I've taken a misstep, something didn't work out for me, but I didn't fall on my butt, I fell forward, which means I'm still advancing. Because then again, you build upon that. So the other one is be prepared. Preparation is the ultimate key. So the most important one of all, I think, is being prepared. Whether you've already attempted to achieve your goals or whether you're just starting, the more preparation you have, the better. Whether that means workshops, classes, reading as many books as possible, listening to podcasts, and just going out and experiencing as much as you can that's within your reach without having to wait for somebody to get you that job and experience it. And this is something that to me applies more consciously to directing, this sort of lateral career that I've been building since last year, since 2021, because of course I put the preparation in since I was a kid, but I don't think I was aware of how prepared I was. So be prepared. So basically, I don't think I was aware of my preparation when I was building my acting career, because it started at such a young age that by the time I did start working at 16, I did have all these hours put into it, you know, and Malcolm Gladwell says in his Outliers book, you need 10,000 hours to become an expert. So I probably didn't have 10,000 hours by the time I was 16, but I had a lot of hours under my belt in terms of acting, in terms of performances, in terms of being on stage, not being embarrassed in front of an audience. But now I'm even more aware of preparation now that I've sort of created this lateral career in directing that started in 2021. And I've completely fallen in love with this new craft. And so I've read every book on the subject that I can get my hands on. I listen to podcasts over and over again, including Pete Chapman that's been on your show, and just practicing, like getting myself a camera and just following my kids around and then downloading an editing program, because so much of directing is editing, is in post-production. Essentially, you can enhance or destroy an actor's performance. So every bit of directing, I mean, learning about camera lenses. Some directors like Quentin Tarantino, they'll tell you don't need to know the camera lenses. Tell your director of photography what you want, and it's his job to figure that out. But I want to know. I want to know every detail. My personality is kind of like, I just see that thing that's right in front of me. I'm kind of like one of those horses that have their eyes covered on the side when I get focused on something. So yeah, so I've done my best. Also, you know, we're currently living in a world where women are only newly being welcomed more openly into the directing positions and sort of more positions of power. So I, as a woman, feel the need to do an even better job. You know, I think that if you're a minority, whichever minority that may be, the bar is always a little higher, more is expected, but it's made me better. So pay attention and be prepared. I would say those are the words. And then there's something that my husband tells me, which is discipline/motivation. So when the motivation isn't there, discipline has to kick in, right? You don't feel like working out today. Well, be disciplined, do it anyway. I'm not motivated. I'll be disciplined to do it anyway. And those are things that also pretty important to carry with you.
These are great.
How do you turn them into how-tos?
How do I turn these things into how-tos? So it's interesting because other than the preparation, which has to come from you itself, it's a little bit of what I mentioned before. So I'll start with preparation. In my business, there's a lot of people that have come before me, right? So you can actually find role models, you can find people that you look up to. And then there's also that dichotomy of the performer versus the person in their real life, right? So one of my role models is probably a lot of people's role model is like Meryl Streep, for example. Not only does she work phenomenally well, she puts every bit of preparation into creating her roles. But for me, as a woman and as a mother, she has managed to stay on top of her game, work consistently, be successful, be loved within the people of the business, which shows you that she's easy to work with and she's humble. And yet she's also managed to build a family. So looking up to certain people is a good way to be prepared, because it kind of gives you an outline of what you could possibly aim for, even if that is, of course, then adjusted to who you are as a person. You know, I'm not Meryl Streep. I'm never going to be Meryl Streep, but I'll be myself. I will still be hopefully successful in my career and be able to have a family. And then also preparation is read plays, read other people's experiences. Where did they go wrong? Where did they go right? A really good book, for example, was Oliver Stone's autobiography that came out a few years ago. And his was a real lesson in the reality of this business, which is even after I won the Oscar, I still had trouble finding work, you know? So there's never a moment where you fully made it and that's it. And now everybody's going to come to you for work. It may be a phase, but it'll fade. So learn from other people's experiences as well. And then be in person in classes and workshops, get experience of collaborating with other people. That's what this entertainment business is all about. It's all a huge collaboration. If you're incapable of collaborating with somebody else, I can tell you right now, you will not make it in this business. Whether it's collaborating with your fellow actors, it's collaborating with the lighting guy or your director of photography, because if he's lit for you to stand on a piece of tape, if you miss that mark by a foot, that light is no longer on your face. So you're in character and you're doing your bit of the magic. You still have to have that technical side with you where you can still be aware to step on the tape that they put down on the floor. You know, sometimes actors get a bad rap because it's like, oh, they're an artist and they need to have the freedom to do this and that. You know, to a certain extent, there is still the way to be prepared to acknowledge the technical side of your job. So yeah, the preparation is situational, but then you do your homework at home. If you love something enough, it shouldn't be difficult to prepare for it.
For being prepared, this is what I got. I have, earlier you mentioned practice is a big part of it. Having heroes so that you have some aspirations, somebody to really look up to, almost like a benchmark, being able to even learn from their experience. And then also taking classes, looking at these other resources where you can really get involved. I think that's even part of that like environment that can help influence you, but also give you the opportunity to collaborate.
And also, at the end of the day, how many jobs do you know that require an audience that have their eyes on you? Whether it's a camera or a live audience, you're being watched at every step of the way that you are performing your job, right? That's it. It's entertainment. You're entertaining someone. So the more hours you put into practicing that, whether it's in a professional setting or in a classroom, the less you'll have to think about it. And then you can just be, which is what playing a character, I mean, depending on the type of, it's not a sitcom is more performative, for example, but if you're taking on a more dramatic role or sort of a more serious feel of a project, you just want to be that character. You want to listen in character and feel in character. And, you know, at least for me, if I have to think of all these other things because I haven't put enough preparation into it, if I haven't prepared my lines well enough, so I'm more worried about saying my lines right than I am in being the character, I'm going to fail. I'm not going to succeed. Even if in the editing process, they fix my performance for me, I don't want to have to fix my performance. I want it to be what hopefully I gave that day. So hours of preparation is a really big deal.
Prep gives you confidence.
Prep gives you confidence. I like that. I like that. And you know, this is kind of off topic with the preparation, use this if you want to, but one of my favorite parts of this business is the fact that because it's creative, you can go to school for it, or you can just be a natural talent and you decide to hone your talent in your own time. But you don't have to wait for anybody to give you a job. You can create that job from literally nothing. You can sit down, you can write a script, you can tell a story that's important to you, you can act in it, you can direct it. You'll have to find funding for it or fund it yourself, but you don't have to wait for a phone call saying, hey man, I have an audition for you, or hey, they want you to direct this episode or this movie. You can create amazingness out of nothing in this business if you want to and if you're passionate enough for it, which is why directing became a possibility for me, although I did get the job from someone else, but I was able to sidestep my practice and step into something that's a different creative process and still do it and learn as I was doing it.
Yeah, it's true. It's like it's a lot of things with all the digital resources we have. You have access and can do things.
Yeah. I mean, I can't be a lawyer and then suddenly say, oh, I'm going to open a medical practice. Well, no, you got to go to school for that. And here, I mean, I went to school for performing arts, so I'm a big fan of going to school. I enjoy being in a classroom, but that's not everybody's answer to preparation. So whatever it is that you need to do individually to prepare for your craft, is find it.
Tell me more about failing forward. How do you do that?
Failing forward. That's something that I learned from my son's preschool teacher. It actually helped me get perspective about not doing something properly or failing at it, if you will. And rather than wallow in whatever problem that or obstacle that has set in front of you, let that be a stepping stone to learning something new, and, maybe not making that mistake again, and giving yourself the chance to make other mistakes. So if you think of failing as a staircase, every time you fail at something, all you're doing is taking a step up. If you never fail, to be honest with you, I feel like your foundation for success isn't solid enough. Because if I only know how to succeed, at some point something might go wrong, or somebody might rub me the wrong way because maybe they don't like my work as much as I think everybody else does. I'm not going to know how to handle it. Scar tissue is stronger than skin. And it's okay to have some failures and some scar tissue in your career path, because it will make you stronger. It will make you more resilient. And it might even make you a little bit kinder to other people who are coming up behind you, because you know how it feels to have been in a certain position before. So yeah, I think failing forward is a really important thing. I don't know a human being on the planet that hasn't failed at some point. There's that classic saying, it's not how you fall, it's how you get up. And that's exactly what failing forward is. It's like, just get up and keep moving. If I walk into an audition room and I don't get it, it's not because I've failed. It's just because I don't fit the part. And that's okay. I don't have to take that personally. I get to move on and learn from that.
I think that's key. You learn from it. You're getting smarter, stronger. I think there's a part of the people that have a fear of failure, or it's something that holds them back. And listening to you, there's a part of it where you need to think it through and understand what's the worst that's going to happen. Understand what are you confronting that hesitation to get comfortable failing.
Just recently, as Wayne Gretzky said, you'll miss 100% of the shots you never take. So it's always worth taking a shot and not being afraid of failure, because if you don't go for it, you've already failed.
Yeah, I've seen some posts on LinkedIn where even with their own kids, they're like celebrating the failures. I think their daughter got her first F and she got a cake. It's like, congrats on your first F. So that's actually a really good thing to start learning early.
I feel like my son has very good sportsmanship. And I knew that, he'll help another team player up if they fall or whatever it is. But, that shows kindness. But there was something when we first started playing soccer when he was really little, you're on one of those teams where some kids don't even want to be on the team. They're all just sort of figuring out what sport they like. So my son and maybe just one or two other kids were interested in being on the team, but they lost most of the games that they played in their league. And my son wasn't really upset about it. It just kind of was what it was. But his first experience was of not winning. And, but we like soccer in our household, and my son's been playing it, and it's such a great way to bond with dad, because my husband used to play and all that stuff. And so he still loves it, but he knows what it feels like to not win, to lose the game. Now he's on a team that is incredibly successful at winning, but everybody loses once in a while. So maybe a couple of the teammates might get really upset, but I'll be like, River, you did a really good job. I saw how hard you played out there. And he's like, Mom, I've lost so many times before. It doesn't even matter. But he's also won a bunch of times, but that didn't poison his perception of like, yeah, so what? We lost, we move on. He works his butt off during the game, but once that game is over, he's like, it's over. We're moving on now. And I just respect him. He's only 8, and I just respect him so much for having that behavior. But he was able to feel that way because he failed first before he succeeded. So he's kind of okay with either one now.
Absolutely. It's like progressive, forward thinking.
Yeah.
What does self-awareness mean? How do you do it?
So self-awareness is the ability to recognize your strengths, but also the things that you need to work on. I don't even call them weaknesses. I think it's just the things you need to work on. And that may be interpersonal, meaning how you interact with other people, as well as just sort of how you behave, in this case, in a working environment, or even with your friend. The word humility is often misconstrued for just like, never talk about yourself, and just always maybe make your successes smaller than they actually are. It's self-awareness. No, I'm okay saying that I am a strong woman. I am okay saying that I have a wonderful career behind me, and I believe a strong one ahead of me. But I also know that I need to work on certain aspects. Yeah, self-awareness is just the ability to know yourself and be okay with who you are and what you need to work on, and not be embarrassed at all when sharing those things with other people.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I always think of when I work with my team, it's you don't know what you don't know what you don't know what you know.
Mm-hmm.
So at times I'm trying to encourage my team members to help me identify those know what I don't know, the things I'm not good at or blinded to, so I can be conscious about it and proactively work on getting better in those areas. I wonder if there's anything that you do in terms of challenging yourself to know yourself better.
I mean, it's an interesting thing because obviously self-awareness is everything in your life, right? And in this case, we've been speaking of all things professional, but my self-awareness as a parent, I think, has been what I have been sort of working on the most, because I have known myself professionally since I was 16 years old. That's over 20 years. I honed my skill of being aware of myself when I'm in a professional setting and how I interact with people. But as a parent, yes, it's been 8 years of being a parent at this point, but I still feel like I'm learning about my own behaviors and becoming self-aware of things that either work as a parent or don't work as a parent. My son the other day, he turned to me and he was like, Mom, when I used to do this thing, I would get this kind of consequence. And when Sierra does it, she doesn't get those consequences anymore. It's different. And I had to stop and think about that and be like, wow, of course, to him, this feels really unfair. But then I was totally open with him. I decided to be sort of, totally open book. And I was like, look, you were the first child. So that has a lot of perks. But the things that aren't perks is that we're going to be experimenting with you and see what works and what doesn't work. And then we'll have to either do the same thing with your sister, or we'll have to shift and sort of re-strategize, because we realized this thing we did with you, it wasn't working in a positive sense. So we have to restructure how we do things. Personally, the self-awareness part of it has happened so much more in the last 8 years as a parent than in any other aspect of my life. I think, and also just as you get older, you also realize that I don't have to put up with certain things from outside people anymore. I think I was always afraid of hurting people's feelings. Even if somebody made me feel uncomfortable, or if I didn't like them particularly, I would still kind of like try and maintain a positive environment. And now that I'm 38 and a mother, my boundaries, I'm much more self-aware of the boundaries that I'm allowed to have. And I've always been allowed to have them, but I didn't have them. And now I do, if any of that makes sense.
Listening is a big part of what I got out of that. That you took time to listen. That actually reminded me of a time where I did an exit interview. And one of the things I wanted to do is get feedback about my leadership, what I do well and what I didn't do well. Later that night, I went out with dinner with Shyla, and I actually asked her the same question. What am I doing well as a parent? What am I not doing as well? And that took me back, because it was the exact opposite of what I expected her to say.
Interesting.
Yeah. Do you remember that, Shyla?
No.
You don't remember? I know you were a little bit younger then. I think you might have been 8 or 9. But I took you out for dinner. I was asking you, how am I doing as a dad? What am I doing that's good? How can I do better? And then I remember you said that you liked the I push you, kind of the discipline part, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But then when I asked how I can improve, remember one of the things you said, I should be easier on your brother because he's sensitive. That was
Oh. Is he older or younger?
younger.
I think there's definitely something to be, I don't know, maybe it depends on families, but I don't know, maybe we as a society, because we've been so ingrained to think that boys can take more than girls can, which is not at all true. Like, kids are kids, like the different personalities, different types of resiliency, all that stuff. But for some reason, I think, you just assume that the boy can take a little bit more, and that's not necessarily true. I mean, listen, I have a boy and a girl too, so I completely understand. Like, sometimes I wonder if my husband's a little gentler on my daughter because she's a girl. And I don't know if I'm not sure if he's aware of it, but I make a point of not being gentler with her, being like, nope, you two are the same. And I will not raise a girl who expects the world to treat her gently.
I think we have a similar philosophy in our house.
What's discipline versus motivation?
So sometimes you feel both. And there are times where motivation just isn't there, and your discipline has to kick in and take over. My husband is a former Navy SEAL, so discipline is something that he very much lives by. But he's helped me with that too, because of course I was disciplined enough throughout my life to make it to where I am today. I was disciplined enough to go to school and work, as we talked about earlier. But sometimes you just wake up one day and you just don't feel like doing anything, but you have to. And so when you're motivated, when you find something you're passionate about, when you find something you really want to be a part of, but not every part of our career, not every part of school, not every part of your relationships with other people are things that you feel like doing all the time. I loved going to school, but I loved languages. I loved art. I loved PE. I loved all sorts of stuff. I did not like math. But I had to be disciplined enough to do my math homework and to go to school and sit through my math class and get through that, because I needed that in order to finish school and to get through that year in school. I love being on stage and I love theater, but I have been a part of projects that I literally was like, kill me now. I wish this would end now. I wish the electricity would fail and I could go home. because I'm very much disliking being here right now. That happens. I'm passionate about the job, but not that particular job. But I had to be disciplined and I had to stick to it and do it to the best of my ability. Because guess what? I'm the one on camera and I'm the one that people see. So if I do a bad job, I'm the one who's failing. So discipline has to take over even when you're not motivated. And if you're lucky enough, there are days where you feel both.
How do you overcome it when you're not motivated? How do you make yourself disciplined? Because I feel like this is the crux of success, that you have to get comfortable doing these things you're uncomfortable doing.
Yeah.
Be objective about it. And I feel like some people can build it as a mindset and they get there, and others struggle with it and they never get there. What'd you do to get there?
People are built differently. I'm not even going to pretend that there's a formula for this, because there's not. People are built differently and people have different aptitudes and different passions and different things. And I think that it's okay to sit back once in a while. I'm not talking about like when you're specifically at your desk or on set doing your job, because at that point you should be giving 100%. But there are days, and if there's one off day here and there that you're just like, I just don't feel like it, it's okay to take a minute out, right? It's okay to give yourself a break. That might just be your brain and your body saying you need a pause, and that's okay. But long term, if you are consistently feeling unmotivated and you're not feeling like you have the discipline to stick to this thing, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Because if you truly love this, whatever it is that you've set out to do, those things should be happening within you. You know what I mean? So if I thought I really wanted to be a CPA, but every day is a huge struggle and I might be in the wrong job. I think passion is a huge part of motivation, huge part of motivation. So yeah, I don't think that there's a specific formula. If it's a consistent thing that you're feeling unmotivated, just maybe take a step back, map out your life that you're feeling unmotivated about, and figure out if maybe you should pivot and try something else. And that's not giving up. I don't think that's not quitting. You know what I mean? There's a fine line between quitting and actually like restructuring and finding something different that you will succeed at.
That's tough. I think you got exposed to it really early.
It was helpful. It was helpful because I have plenty of friends who, when we finished high school, they're like, I don't know what I want to do. And that's a tough place to be, because the world expects you to know what you want to do at 18, which is tough. Like, you're 18. What have you seen? What have you done at that point to be able to experience the world and really find out what's out there and that's available to you? Yes, I fully am self-aware that I was very lucky to find my passion early on in life, and that it was fed by my parents when I didn't have control over it. But find your passion, and then the motivation will come, and then the discipline will accompany that for sure.
That's interesting how you put them together. Well, how do you keep yourself disciplined there, Missy?
I keep myself disciplined. So whenever I wake up in the morning, I just want to stay in bed. But I realize I have a whole day to get through. I have to go to school. I have to do a lot of work after that. And I just think about getting through it. If I wake up, time will pass by. I'm going to get through it either way. So why can't I just get up and go to school and deal with it? Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I can't wait for my kids to think like that too. Because right now we're like, go put on your shoes, go put on your uniform. Their discipline still very much comes from us. They're learning, and eventually our little voices will be so ingrained inside of them that they'll hear us without us having to say it, probably. But that's really amazing.
I like that a lot. That was a good job. I think you should think about adding, maybe in the morning, if there's a way to remind yourself of your goals that you're working on. You're working on piano, you got the online store you're working on, those little things to remind yourself. I feel like it helps. That way keep top of mind that from the beginning, that doesn't wait till later in the day to remind yourself what you're striving to achieve. But that's good. I like you got the morning ritual to know that you got to get this day done.
What's the best mistake you've ever made?
Oh gosh, that's so interesting, because I think the perspective on what a mistake has shifted over the years. I might tell you that play I was telling you about that I hated being a part of was a mistake. But now I look back and think that just fed my discipline. You know what I mean? So I don't see it as a mistake anymore. But at the time, while I was in it, I would curse that play every single day that I had to be a part of it. I love the people, but I did not enjoy the play at all. So if you can consider it a mistake, I would say that taking part in a specific job that I wasn't happy with was a mistake. But I've grown out of thinking that it was a mistake.
That's exactly how these stories work. You sort of realize that it was the best mistake because
it
got you somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
What advice would you give to the next generation of leaders?
Listen, learn about as many different, I mean, leaders is a broad term because it could be political leaders, it could be leaders in my specific business, but I would say, so I'm going to be specific to my business, to my industry, which is get to know everybody else's jobs as well as you can. Learn everybody's name that you're working with and be inclusive in the process of creatively building something, because I guarantee that out of you, if I'm directing something, I have a specific idea that I'm envisioning. As soon as I read that page on the script, something popped in my head immediately. And then I share that with my director of photography or with my writer or whatever it is. And they say, oh, that's so interesting. I had thought about it this completely other way. And then from those two ideas, you're going to get something that just blows it all out of the water. So be good at listening and collaborate with those around you, learn everybody's jobs, understand what the camera person has to do, what the camera operator does, what the focus puller has to do, because that'll change how you perform in front of the camera. Learn how some of the lighting, how you can make it easier for the lighting guys, help out with that. Even from sound, don't make noise over talking because the sound department hates that. And it's much harder to cut something together in editing. Learn editing. So know as much as you can around you, even though it's not your job to do those things. Learn them anyway.
That was great advice. Charlotte, you can ask anything you want. Daniel's a professional actress, like pretty successful. You got anything that you're curious about you want to ask her?
Yeah. I'm thinking of a good one.
Well, while you're thinking, I'll also say, don't ever compromise yourself. Like, don't take a job or avoid situations that you feel like you're compromising your integrity or your principles. It's okay to take risks. Sometimes your heart's beating and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous about doing this thing. That can be a good thing. That means that you're about to do something that's probably pretty awesome. But if your gut feeling is telling you this just doesn't feel right at all, do not do it. It doesn't matter who you're trying to impress. It doesn't matter if you're afraid of getting fired from that job. It doesn't matter. If something does not feel right, absolutely take a step back.
Did you have to try hard to be an actor?
Did I have to try hard?
Yeah, like practice a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, how hard did you try? Like, did you work hard on it or like never had time for it?
I made time for it. That's a really, really good question. I had a conversation a long time ago with a friend and they had asked me if I'd gotten something done. And I said, no, I didn't have time for it. And he said, yes, you did. You just didn't prioritize it. And it dawned on me that as people, we have time for whatever we want to have time for. You just have to prioritize it. Oh, I didn't get enough sleep last night. You didn't prioritize sleep. You didn't go to bed at the time. You're probably on your phone watching something. I prioritized my craft growing up. I will tell you, because I started at 16, my friends would go and hang out. On the weekends, they'd go out and they'd go maybe to a bar or something like that at 16, 17, 18. I come from Europe. We go out earlier than people do here in the US. Here it's like 21 and up. Back home, 16, you can already go sit at a bar. And they would go out. But I had to be at work on Saturday mornings at like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. So I couldn't go out on Fridays because that would just be really irresponsible of me. So very, very early on, I chose to prioritize my work while still having friends, but prioritizing a good decision over not sleeping all night because I'm going out with my friends and staying up late and then being too tired to do my job properly. So yeah, I did work hard because when you're a teenager, you so badly want to be with your friends and you want to hang out with them and you don't want to miss out on any of the crazy stories that they tell you about the next day. But I had to make a choice because I had also promised my parents that I would be disciplined when it came to my school and my work. They said, can you handle both? I said, I think so. Let's do it. Yeah. Prioritizing was a decision I made. And sometimes it was hard work because it was hard to say no to something else I wanted to do in order to be able to do this other thing that I wanted to do. It also meant that I was the only friend at the time that was earning any money. So I was like, drinks on me.
Danielle, thank you for the time. Thank you for having us on this interview. I have learned a lot, actually. Is there any way that people could follow you? Do you have any social media account?
Yeah, I do. So I have Instagram, which is just Daniela Ruah, my name. I have Twitter, which is just Daniela Ruah, at Daniela Ruah. And then I have a Facebook page, which for some reason got created in Portuguese. So it's Oficial Daniela Ruah, the word official, but spelled in Portuguese. Not entirely sure why we went in that direction. Must have been a long time ago. So Oficial Daniela Ruah, Oficial. But I mostly use Instagram. So
Thanks, Daniela. Enjoyed this conversation. It was so fun to chat with you, and really want to thank you for taking the time with Shiloh and I today.
Yeah, for sure. This was really enlightening. I love when younger generations participate with parents. And congratulations to you, Shiloh, for running your own business. That is absolutely incredible. And that takes discipline. That takes a lot of discipline because you're busy with school and piano and probably a bunch of other after school activities. And yet you're still running your business and taking the time to make the jewelry. That's a lot of discipline. So you'll be teaching people about that soon enough. We think that discipline is just like a go, go, go thing, but sometimes you need to have the discipline to say no, you know, as an actor or a director, especially when you're starting off. And I think this is a sentiment that sticks with people throughout their careers, even if they are super successful, which is you never know when that next job is coming. And so you almost have to say yes to everything you can get. Like everything that comes to your net is fish. And that's not necessarily the case, especially if you're trying to create your career. You want the world to see you the way you want to be seen. And so therefore you have to hone the path and be so specific with the shape of that path. And sometimes that path is saying no to something because it doesn't fit into the brand or the type of person you want to be.
That took me probably one of the hardest things for me to learn. It's just to say no.
Oh, trust me too. But now with a family, I don't want to take a job that's going to be 6 months on the other side of the world. Once upon a time, that would have sounded like a dream because the experience and the fun and the adventure of it. But now I have children that are at a school age. And if I don't have to miss out on a single day of their life, I'm not going to.
Yep.
It's okay to be away for a week here, a week there, whatever it is. But I'm not just actor now. I am mother primarily. And if I get to incorporate those two things together, even better. And so far it's worked out that way.
That's so true. I think, yeah, you'll know when you hit that limited time that you can't do everything and got to start saying no.
Yeah, exactly.
Better learn it earlier. Well, thanks again.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you
Thanks
very
so
much, Charlotte. Thank you. Bye, guys.